Good evening, everyone, and a warm welcome to all educators joining us today. On behalf of CENTA, we are delighted to have you with us for another insightful session in our ongoing CENTA webinar series for teachers, a space where passionate educators come together to learn, reflect, and grow professionally. Your presence and participation continue to inspire us as we build a stronger, more empowered teaching community. Now it's a pleasure to introduce the facilitator for this transformative session, Jyotsna Shivakumar.
Thank you, Ms. Jupiter, for the introduction. So I'm very
Jyotsna
happy.
Shivakumar. Yes,
Yes,
yes. Please go ahead.
I'm very happy to be having this session for a very discerning group of educators today. And I am a foreign language teacher based out of the Middle East. And I would like to speak about the task-based learning and the project-based learning in the context of foreign language learning and teaching in today's session.
Okay, ma'am, I'll just formally give an introduction. Jyotsna Shivakumar is an experienced educator with over 12 years of teaching experience across diverse curricula. She is a TESOL certified and a qualified French language teacher with demonstrated expertise in differentiated instruction, inquiry based pedagogy, and project based learning. She is strongly committed to pedagogical research and reflective teaching practices. Additionally, a certified graphologist with a scholarly interest in research and its intersections with education. Now, back to the session. Welcome, Jyotsna Shivakumar, once again, and over to you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your introduction. I am a foreign language teacher based out of Middle East. So my today's topic would be task-based learning in the context of foreign language teaching. The subject that I teach is French, and I handle grades 9 to 10. And apart from French, I also have proficiency in Spanish. So these are time-tested methods and strategies that I have adopted in my classrooms, which have worked wonders with my students, and I would like to share that with a discerning group of educators who are joining us live from various parts of the world. So basically, what is task-based learning? So task-based learning, how can we incorporate it into our pedagogy? So as I take you to this presentation, I shall just give you examples from various themes that are normally dealt with in various boards across India. So yes, so what is going to be our agenda today? So there will be introduction to different learning and teaching approaches in the context of language learning. And we will also be taking a sneak peek into the age-old existing methodologies. So the practices that have existed long before the technology was developed, and the practice that was adopted probably in 1950s and 60s, when the entire or most of the world was still very analog. And we will also learn about task-based teaching, its key elements, its implementation, challenges, and solutions. We will also be learning about project-based learning. So these task-based learning and project-based learning are two very different topics and very two different approaches. So we shall be learning about them, and that will take us to the end of the presentation. And first of all, we will learn, or we will see what is the difference between approach, methods, and methodology. So I am sure most of you must already be knowing the difference. However, we'll just see what an approach is, what a method is, and what a methodology is. So approach is nothing, it's just a way of looking at learning and teaching. So approach is basically the bigger picture, and method is the application of an approach in the context of language teaching. So basically, approach is the bigger picture and method is just a means to an end. And what are the various age old existing methodologies. So these are the existing methodologies, and some of them are have been used since a long time. So the first one is the oral situational approach, the audio lingual approach, and the communicative language teaching that is still adopted in many schools across India, the natural comprehensible input approach, and there are two more modern methodologies that are widely used, and which is also has had a very favorable response from the student community, one being task based language teaching and the other one being the project based language teaching.
Now we have a poll on the screen. The question is, which method best teaches real world vocabulary? We have a poll on the screen. The question is, which method best teaches real world vocabulary? I request everyone to vote their answers. Yes, the vote is going on, and we have, yes, the first answer, option A, communicative language teaching, as a correct answer, which a 38% people chose the option A, communicative language teaching.
Yes, communicative language teaching is the right option. So, yes, basically, we will be looking at communicative language teaching as well. Now, we'll proceed with the next slide. So, what is oral situational approach? It was used in 1920s in the United Kingdom. So, if anybody is if I'm sure our audiences must be must be most of them might have done their levels in Alliance Francaise in various cities across India. So one of the methodologies that is used in the Alliance Francaise is the oral situational approach. So if you see, look at it, it was developed in 1920s in the United Kingdom, and it was developed in some grammar schools as well. And it's basically it is about the oral presentation, repetition, drilling, and question answers. So it's concentrates more on the spoken, as the name suggests, and also the content is visually stimulating and pictorial. And here in oral situational approach, grammar is not taught separately, rather it is a way, it's rather a means to an end. Grammar is taught to learn the language. Students are not explained the rules of grammar explicitly, rather they are taught the language, and then they learn the grammar rules through the language. And what happens is, and also, but one of the demerits of this is that there's no real communication, and it is only suitable for a selected group of learners. Not in a classroom, if we see there are various types of learners, some might be beginners, some might be linguistically capable, some might not be very linguistically capable, some might have the ability to be able to communicate succinctly, some might not be having the ability to communicate succinctly, some might need prodding, they might need guidance, they might need handholding. But this method does not lend itself to any sort of differentiation. It's rather a very fixed approach or a method, so which could only cater to a certain group of learners. So this method had that demerit, but it was used and it is still used in various contexts. It's very used in various classroom situations, in in various countries, including India. And then the next one is the audiolingual approach. So, audiolingual approach is still it is used in many schools. If some of the schools which use textbooks like Tricolor, you still have the audiolingual approach. Like for example, dialogues and drill form the basis. What sort of dialogues? Dialogues about the real world situations. The real world situations include shopping, and having a conversation with a service provider, or having a conversation with a travel agent to book your tickets, mostly scenarios pertaining to the real world. So these are the in this dialogues and drills form the basis. So students rehearse, the students do a lot of role plays, they rehearse various dialogues, and then they learn, they listen to the dialogues. Through repetitively listening to it, they understand the structures, they understand the verbs, they understand various oral structures to be able to communicate, to be able to form sentences. So, but there is a huge emphasis on correct pronunciation, accuracy, and mastery of structural patterns. So the French language teachers, and probably any foreign language teacher here, would be able to understand what I'm saying. So there are certain structures that we use while communicating orally in French, and also the written French or the written Spanish follows certain structures. So these, and there is a vast difference between spoken French and written French as well. So this basically approach helps the students to acquire a solid mastery over the structures, like how which verbs do you use when you want to order, let's say, groceries. What are the verbs that we use when we want to request somebody, when we book our tickets to travel to any part of the world. And these are the these are reinforced mostly through drills, and repetition, gap filling, sentence formation takes priority in this method. There's a lot of emphasis on that. And this methodology is cited as dull and boring because it undervalues communication to a very huge extent, because it was seen as a very monotonous and a very mill of the mold type of approach. So, but this is one of the approaches that are still used interchangeably. Probably, it is used along with the other approaches as well. And next one is the communicative language teaching. In communicative language teaching, there is actually a focus on communication. There's authentic language use, and there is task-based learning. So we see the term task-based learning here. So what do we understand? So there is students are required to complete a task. The task would include placing an order. Like for example, if there's a conversation between two people, let's say there is a conversation between the shopkeeper and a client. The first task would be to greet the shopkeeper and then inquire about the price of a product, or talk about, express your need, express your need to the shopkeeper about what you would like to purchase and all that. Then the shopkeeper responds to you saying if the particular product is available, and then the customer has to choose and pick and choose, and has to communicate to the shopkeeper about what he or she wants to buy. And after purchasing, you and then the next task would be to inquire the price of the product, and then pay, and then gently thank the shopkeeper and leave. So this builds authentic language use. Language is used, the language that is used, very much used in the real world, is used in communicative language teaching. So if students are trained in this methodology, they are able to go out and make conversations with people very easily, without much effort or without much struggle. And here in this methodology, fluency is encouraged, fluency is valued, or fluency is given more importance over accuracy. Of course, but that doesn't mean that the students can deviate from the rules, or they can speak in any manner they want. But fluency, mistakes are not very seriously penalized, because students are still at the learning stage. So they are given ample opportunities to improvise, to learn from their mistakes, and to understand from their mistakes, and they are encouraged to speak, you make the use of language in the real world.
Yes, now we have another poll on the screen. The question is, CLT is most effective because it, and most people, 90% people, 90% educators chose the first one, Uses real life communication.
Yes, CLT uses real life communication. As I already said, CLT is very popular, or it is very popular among educators, or it's a much sought after methodology because it focuses on real world communication, which is actually the need of the hour, or the which is actually the way a language has to be learnt, or the language has to be taught. Yes, moving on. The natural comprehensible input approach is the next approach. There is a focus on understanding, and there is meaning over form. Uh, and the environment is deliberately kept, very friendly. Mistakes are, as I already said, the mistakes are generally not very seriously. Students are not penalized for the mistakes that they make. And also, this methodology, what happens is, the way you acquire a second language in this methodology is through listening, and is by actually staying silent with the language. When I say silent with the language, it's silent input. Students are given a lot of inputs. They absorb they absorb the language. They listen to a lot of various texts, various audio recordings, various they're exposed to various texts, recordings, and they stay in longer periods of silence, and they absorb the language before they actually start communicating in the language. Because and the environment is deliberately has to be very friendly, and the stress has to be really very minimal for the students, and the students uh, should not be forced to speak immediately in the language. They should be given ample opportunities to absorb consciously. So they should be there. The conscious absorption of the language should happen before they actually start speaking in the language. So it may not click, but over a period of time, students become accustomed. They become used to this, and then they start producing the output much later or gradually. This is a very gradual method. So it's not like in the very first session, we give the students an audio or a text, make them go through it and ask them to reproduce something immediately. So there's not much of an emphasis, or there's not much of a stress on the output. The output takes time, and it is okay if the output takes time, because the students have to be given that time to be able to absorb a language. This method has also been, when I spoke to somebody, a very distinguished educator, what I was told was that each student learns, when it comes to learning a language, each student learns language in a different way. We all know that very well. So some students require repeated exposure to the language, whereas some students might have that natural linguistic ability. Like most of you might be aware of Howard Gardner's multiple intelligence theory. Some might be linguistically inclined as well, so they might be able to give the output immediately. They may be able to give a superlative output immediately, but whereas some students might need repeated exposure to a language. Also, when it comes to vocabulary learning, uh, when I had an interaction with one of the professors who teaches in the University of Southern California, his name is Kevin Flanagan, and done a path-breaking work in the in the context of vocabulary teaching. So he says that for a child or for a student to be able to use a word effectively in a sentence, the students might should have had at least should have had at least multiple exposure to a word. At least he was saying that the child, before being able to use a particular word in a sentence, I'm not even talking about a conversation, I'm talking about a sentence. So for a child to be able to use a word very effectively in a sentence, the child must have had the exposure of the same word at least 12 times in multiple contexts. So that is very crucial to be able to build a very strong vocabulary. So this silent period is extremely important in natural comprehensible input approach, because when we started learning our how did we learn our mother tongue? We did not learn our mother tongue in a very conventional way. From day one, we were in that environment. From day one, from the time we were born, we heard our parents speaking the language, the other people in the house speaking the language, and we were exposed. We were constantly, we were surrounded by the language. We were listening to the language, and that's how we acquired the ability to speak the language. We did not learn the rules of our mother tongue before actually learning to speak it. So this method is an attempt to replicate the way we learned our mother tongue. So we learnt our mother tongue through immersion, because we used to listen to our, from the, even before we were able to speak, even before our speech developed, we still were listening to the you know, words uttered by the people in our homes, our parents, grandparents, our siblings, and that's how we acquired the language. We acquired it naturally. So this natural comprehensible output, the foreign language is also taught very naturally to the students without much stress on grammar rules, because when they are taught a lot of grammar, when you teach a lot of grammar before you actually teach a language, teach the nuances of the language, the children learn more about the language than the language itself. They learn more about the language than the language itself, which is not a very holistic way, or which is not a very wholesome way of learning a language. So the natural comprehensible input is very akin to the way a child acquires his or her mother tongue. Now we have, I would like to draw your attention on these three people who've done who've done some path breaking work in the context of language teaching and learning. One of them is a very important linguist called Noam Chomsky. I'm sure some of you who have the literature background uh, might be aware of him. He's an nonagenarian, still he's around, and he gives a lot of talks, and his talks are available on YouTube. So he actually is a very Noam Chomsky is a very deep thinking linguist, and he is the father of cognitive revolution, and he is a philosopher and a linguist, and he's done groundbreaking research in the field of cognitive psychology. And Noam Chomsky talks about something called as inbuilt language acquisition device. So this has also been validated, or it has been validated by Dr. Maria Montessori. So what he says is, we as humans are built with something called as a are built with language acquisition device. So that's how we are able to absorb the language, and we are able to produce a language, different languages that we are exposed to. So it's not that, just because we are endowed with something called as a language acquisition device, we are able to listen as well as reproduce or use the words in the correct context. We just don't use words randomly. We are able to use the words in the correct context. We are able to evaluate and use the words correctively in multiple contexts, because we all have that inbuilt language acquisition device through which we absorb various languages. Because this theory is made by actually studying the cases of various feral children who grew up in what do you say, a language deprived atmosphere in America. So he actually has done he's done a lot of work when it comes to language learning and language teaching as well, and he's done a lot of work, and his work is more of neuroscience. And there is this another philosopher called Stephen Krashen. He is an American philosopher, and a linguist and an activist, and currently he's still serving as a professor in the University of Southern California. So he's made 5 hypotheses of second language acquisition. His work is more specific to second language learning. So what are the now what do we call these hypotheses? What is this actually? So acquisition learning hypothesis, monitor hypothesis, and then natural order hypothesis, input hypothesis, and affective filter hypothesis. So we acquire the language, and then we monitor how it goes, and then natural order, the language flows, and then the input, and then affective filter. Affective filter is something that we all experience at some point of time. Like we might be able to we might know the relevant vocabulary, we might have the ability to speak, but then we are kind of little bit, we hesitate to speak very freely because of our fear of how we will be judged by the outsiders. So we tend to kind of, we tend to suppress ourselves, we tend to control ourselves, we tend to take a very what do you say, cautious approach when it comes to speaking. So he says these are the various filters, these are the various difficulties that a second language learner faces. So this work is actually very relevant in the field of Tisol, and also he's done a lot of work in the subject of didactics. And I encourage you to actually go through or his YouTube videos, and his YouTube videos contain a mine of information, and especially those who are interested in the in the teaching of English as a foreign language, as a secondary language, or as a foreign language, can actually go through his videos. And then this the other person whose work, who's done considerable work in the um, in the field of psychology, and which is primarily related to language learning and teaching, is Professor Monisha Pashupati, and she is still an associate professor of psychology at the University of Utah. Her specialty happens to be the acquisition of second language in early childhood, teenhood, and adulthood. So as children tend to learn languages very easily because they have fresh minds, and they don't have too many, they don't carry the baggage of the past information. So for example, if let's say, if I just say a sentence like, for example, she plays football or he eats an ice cream, they are able to verbatim say it. They don't dissect the sentence. They don't see what is the subject, what is the verb, and what is the object. They seldom dissect the sentences. They just are able to just uh, repeat the form and the structure without speculating about it too much in their minds. That's because their minds are fresh, and they don't know the technicalities. They are yet to learn the technicalities. That definitely works in their favor, because that boosts their ability to learn a language easily, and and faster compared to the adults who actually takes time to process languages. Because when we learn, like, if let's say if we learn more than one language, we tend to make that associations, right? We make associations with the languages that we've learned earlier. We tend to compare the structures, we tend to compare the syntax, we tend to compare the grammatical rules, we tend to compare the word order, the sentence formation, and everything, which kind of slows down our learning process. And teenhood also, students are in when children are when a child is young, when the child is about 3 to 4 years, or when the child is from 3 to 8 years of age, the child is able to process much faster, because the child, as I already said, the child does not carry the baggage of the information. The child is fresh, and they are acquiring the learning about, probably they might be learning about a particular sentence for the they might be encountering a sentence for the first time. So they might be processing it faster than the adults. But the children learn in a very direct way. But adults, we all have something called as an associative learning. We tend to associate concepts with, we tend to connect our current learning with something that we've learned previously, and we tend to form connections, and that's how most of the information is retained by us. So basically, and I would like to say that when I came across her works, she had given a lot of practical inputs on how to learn a language and how to make rapid progress in the language as an adult. And also, she had mentioned her works probably talk about what are the time tested, or what are the more practical ways to acquire a language as an adult when you're juggling different priorities as an adult, when we are an adult, when we are working professionals, and when we have a lot of responsibilities in domestic front. We juggle so many responsibilities. So in the when we do so many things, when we are handling so many things, how can we optimally use our time and intelligence to acquire any language in a more efficient way? So her work focuses on this mainly. And she also talks about how exercise is very important. So this might be completely out of the topic uh, that I'm talking about right now. But she says that working out regularly and doing a lot of, especially strength training, that kind of helps your brain. It refreshes your brain and it helps you to learn and acquire a language much more efficiently, um, than other people who don't exercise as much. And also, she talks about various methods that you might already be knowing about, like the brain dump technique. We all know what brain dump is. I don't have to tell you. You just take a paper and write. Let's say we learn a concept, and then we pull out a sheet of paper. We list down all the concepts that we've learned, and then we put down everything that we've learned, and then we go back to our source of learning and check, identify the gaps of learning and fill those gaps. She talks about that as well. So her method, her mostly her videos or her works don't have a lot of technical jargons. It's very simple, no fluff, very simple, straightforward, sensible advice. I would encourage everybody to explore about more about her. She's one of those people I feel deserve a lot of attention, and her works are still not accessible to many people, or not many people still know about her. But it would be good if many people knew about her and explored about her. So yes. Now moving on. So what does she say about, what is her advice on learning, on how to learn a second language? Mastering the material is very important, and then also motivating a child is very important. So when I talk about motivation, it's not about praising the child all the time. It's about um acknowledging a child when a child takes sincere efforts, but also telling the child, continuously showing the child as to where he needs to improve. Too much of praise might also slow down their progress, and it might like breed complacence. But she says it's very important that you tell them on their areas of improvement more than you actually praise them. So motivating, she says that too much of praise, too praising too often, or heaping a lot of praises in the child might ruin their progress. So that's something that we all need to be mindful of. And now that takes us to the 21st century learning design. So these are the six skills that have been designed, and that have been actually, these belong to the realm of universal design for learning. So, number one, collaboration. So, students should, instead of working individually, students should collaborate, and they must be able to collaborate and successfully deliver a project. So, that develops their interpersonal skills, their ability to collaborate, uh, assign roles and responsibilities to each other, and work collectively as a group and succeed as a group. And skilled communication, it's very important that students learn to communicate very clearly. They have to communicate. Let's say a task is assigned to the students, they must be able to communicate very clearly amongst themselves, and they must be able to communicate in turn to the teacher as well. Self regulation. So self regulation is very extremely important. How a child responds, like let's say a child is trying out doing a task, and the child is not very successful in the first attempt. If the child is not successful in the first attempt, some children might feel very demotivated, might feel very upset about not being able to succeed in the first attempt, and they might give up, or they might lose, they might feel disheartened, and some might even start crying, and some might say that, okay, this is not meant for me, I'm not going to try it because I failed once, I'm not going to do it again. So but how is a child treating a failure? Is a child able to self regulate and get back to task, and then try the task again to see what the mistakes he has made the first time and rectify those mistakes? Is it something that he or she is coming up with? That is also extremely important. The self regulation skill is very important, not to get too demotivated when the results don't go their way, or not to get too complacent when they see positive results. So the self regulation is an extremely important skill. and knowledge construction. So knowledge construction is also a very important skill that is used in that is given importance or predominance in various boards. So for example, if the child is given a data, how what is it that they are actually understanding from the data? They, let's say they are, they do, let's say we assign them a research project and they are, let's say they are working on a research project and they come up with their own findings. What is it that they are constructing from the knowledge that they have learned? It's not just it's not just presenting the points or presenting the data that they got or copying the data that they got from various sources or various sites. It's about how they collate and present the entire data that matters. So, and use of ICT for learning. So most of the Gen Z kids are, most of them are very sound in technology. I don't have to say that. So how is it that they're how good they are with their digital skills? How are they able to put their digital skills to best use? How is it that they are? What are the tools that they are using to finally come up with the final product or their final, assignment cut? That's extremely important. And the last one being real world problem solving and innovation. So most of our subjects like global perspectives is more about real world problem solving and innovation. And the global perspectives topic, that is one of the subjects in IGCSE, focuses more on real world problem solving and innovation. Like, more there, children are exposed to various challenges from grade 1 to grade 10, and the challenges only serve as means to an end. So the children have to actually, they investigate on a real world problem and then they try to bring solutions to the real world problem. They analyze problem through local, global, and personal lens, and then they come up with the solutions to address the real world problems. So it's about how they are able to, like, I've seen so many children building models, especially when I've seen the IBPYP exhibitions. Many students talk about sustainability. They come up with innovative solutions to make this planet a greener planet, to minimize wastage, to reduce carbon emission and all of that. So that is all related to real world problem solving, and how are they able to use various innovative techniques to find solutions to real world problems. Yes. Now we shall delve into task based learning.
She has another poll question on the screen. I request everyone to answer. The question is, task based learning is most effective when learners. The voting is going on. I request everyone to cast their votes. Yes, 83, now 85% people chose the first option, use language to solve tasks. Most people chose the first option, use language to solve tasks.
Yes, exactly. That's the purpose of task based learning. So, yes, so task based learning, we'll be now delving into the task based learning. So, what is task based learning? Students learn through tasks, it's self explanatory, and there's more focus on the meaning, and students are assigned different type of tasks. And it is very student centered, it is very student centric. One of the main merits of this method is that it's a very student centric method, and it has absolutely 100% real world relevance. So it is very relevant. It is not something, it really helps them to, when I say relevance, what I understand, or what I understand through the term relevance is, it has solid use in the real world. It is not something obsolete, or it is not something that is no longer used in the real world, or which is kind of, with just whose learning just ends in the classroom itself. Students are able to take the knowledge with them and they're able to apply it in the real world situations. So it has real world relevance. That's the most important or the most salient feature of the task based learning. So this is one scenario from the NCERT textbook on Jeune. So this can be adapted into task-based learning in our classrooms. Like, for example, this is lesson 8, Faire des achats, of the first um, of the Entrejeune book number one. So yeah. So basically, yeah. So basically, this task-based learning, how this chapter, faire des achats means to do shopping, right? So how can this be interpreted, or how can we design a task-based learning exercise based on this chapter? So I'm just showing something that I have done. So this exercise, this is one such example. I'm sure many of you might come up with more such examples, but this is designed keeping the beginners in mind. This also, the intermediate students can attempt this. So students can actually, what the students can do is, in this particular, students are you can see a list. I'm sorry if the size is font is small, but this is a list of all the grocery items. So you can see that one side it is printed in English, and the other side, the French side, is left blank, and the quantity is printed and the price is left blank. So what can, once the students are introduced to the vocabulary in lesson 8, what they can do is this it, but it has to be monitored by a teacher. Students, all students can, if you're giving it as a homework, students can do it at home, but you encourage the students to use an existing and authentic site to be able to complete this activity. Like for example, students in France, they can go to the Carrefour website, and then what the students have to do is they have to write the French equivalent of the English words given in the blank, and then in that way they get immersed, or they get more acquainted and familiar with the vocabulary. And then what they have to do is they have to go to the website, and then they will have to find out the equivalent of the English word, and then they will have to write that down. Or if they know, if they've learned the vocabulary on their own, they can do that. But otherwise, they have to find out the French equivalent from the website and copy down the words. And after that, the quantity is given, and then they'll have to write the currency in French. Like for example, in French, it will be the euro 30 centime, something like that. They have to write they can assign their own prices, and they can come up with their own prices, or they can refer to the prices in the website, and they can complete this chart. So this is something that also that encourages the use of language in the real world, and also students have agency. Students are also given minimal agency in this task. Like they're allowed to decide the prices by themselves. They're not asked to write the prices. They're not given something, or they're not told to stick to any particular price. Rather, they can decide for themselves as to which price or what price they want to assign for each item. So this activity can be assigned for beginner level learners as well as for the intermediate level learners. So students come up with their own um grocery list. So this is something that can be a very rewarding and a very interesting activity for the students, for the beginner level and the intermediate students. But this is a very simplistic activity. We can actually encourage the complexity, or we can introduce tougher or difficult, more challenging activities once they finish this sort of activity. But to start off, or to just set the pace, it's very important to give them quick wins. They should be given they should be allowed to taste quick wins, and they should like feel only then will they be able to proceed further. Only then they be able to take on more complex tasks with more vigor and enthusiasm. So it's very important to just give them some sense of complacence. Initially, it's okay to give them some sense of complacence uh, before starting. Yes, also the more advanced type of activity, I would like to talk about that. This could include like students. In one of the classrooms, the students created a menu card. So how is it that how can you? But it's very important that they don't go, they don't become too creative, or they don't go overboard, and they do something that is probably that might not be relevant. So it's very important that we guide them. We can give them the basic parameters and then tell them to adhere to those parameters. It's very important. It's not advisable to thrust it entirely in their hands, because they might not know where to stop. They might go a little overboard, and the output might not be look might not look like an actual academic work. So the menu creation, the task could include three stages. So one should definitely be a pre-task, that the preparation, you prepare the students for the task. You set up the students for the task. The objective is introduce the theme of the task, creating a menu, and provide necessary language tools. So when I say, for example, starters, you can give them the vocabulary for the starters. You can give them the vocabulary for the main dish. You can give them the vocabulary for the side dish, the drinks and desserts and everything. And then the next one could be the task stage. They will have to create a menu. So in this stage, you can brainstorm with students and ask them, do you want to, is it, you want to create a menu for the cafe, or do you want to create a menu for a restaurant, or do you want to create menu for a pub? You want to create a menu for bed and breakfast? You can brainstorm with them and help them choose, and also guide them, or just listen to what they have to say and then guide them appropriately. But the students have to work collaboratively to create their own French restaurant menu. So we can encourage them in the beginning by telling them that, okay, hey, let's say if you're opening a restaurant in the future, let's say you want to open a restaurant in the future, and some of them might say, no, ma'am, I don't want to open a restaurant. So yeah, so but then we can just tell them, see, let's say, or let's say you are going to a restaurant. What is the ideal menu, or what are the things that, what are the menus that you would want the restaurant to serve? So and then and what they can do is, students can work collaboratively to create their own French restaurant menu. But it's very important that you tell them to create a menu in the target language, depending on the target language that you are teaching. Like, for example, if it's French, the dishes have to be entirely in French. If it's Spanish, it has to be entirely in Spanish. If it's German, yes, absolutely, all the cuisine has to be German. So that's something that we have to set as a ground rule. And then there's something called as post task stage, reflection and feedback. This is extremely important, and I would say that this is very, very important step in a collaborative work. So the students have to, once they finish the task, and you can also tell them, when it comes to students like to decorate, they would like to, and most of them are so well versed in Canva, so they create very nice layouts in Canva. They create very attractive layouts in Canva. You can give them various inputs. You can you can peruse through their final work, and you can perform edits and give them feedback, and tell them to reduce or add something, definitely. Yes. And then for this, I prefer to use a rubric or a checklist. I prefer to introduce it to the students in advance before introducing them to the task, so that students have cognizance of what they will be evaluated on. So the students will reflect on what they've learned during the task, and that they feel comfortable using the new vocabulary, or where they need challenges, and then the teachers to provide feedback to the students at the end of the activity. So the teacher has to evaluate the students according to the rubric, and tell them if they have deviated from the rubric, or if they are not performed, how do I say, according to the rubric. So we can gently provide them feedback, and tell them to make amends if necessary. That's very important. But reflection is something that we should never skip. And project based learning, so this is a very important and a very trending concept or topic. So project based learning is very much implementable or doable in the context of language learning and teaching. So basically, PBL, or project based learning, is an instructional approach where students learn by actively engaging in a project, and that requires critical thinking, problem solving, collaboration, and creativity. We learned about the 21st century skills. So these skills are a part of that, of the universal learning design. So the project spans for a longer time, and it allows the students to apply knowledge and skills to the real world context. So it is not a very, it's a very prolonged activity. It is not completed in 1 or 2 weeks. It might run up to several months, not several months, probably maybe 2 to 3 months, or probably even more. So key features, it has real world relevance, and students' voice and choice is respected. They are given a voice and choice in their own project. It's inquiry based, so students inquire into a particular concept. They deepen their learning. They take initiatives to understand a particular topic. They critically think about solving a problem. They collaborate. They agree. They disagree, and then they finally, everybody collectively produces an output. And then they have to collaborate. It should be inquiry based, and students have to collaborate, and then they have to reflect on how they have done. The reflection part is again very important, because only through reflection they will know what to retain and what not to retain, what was they might be able to come to consensus on certain things, and then they might be able to uh, eliminate that which is not necessary, and then the public product is launched. So the public product is something that actually uh, is very, has a lot of relevance in the real world. It's a solution to the real world problem. So now, what are the benefits? It has humongous benefits, and students have benefited across the world. They have benefited immensely through project based learning, because it's very, students are very engaged in the learning. They are not passive. They are active learners. They take the initiative. When they take the initiative, they are going to be giving their best, and then it promotes critical thinking. When students work as a group, each student might have a different thought process. Some, they may agree, they may disagree on certain things. They may not be able to kind of immediately work as a team, but then they probably then will break the barriers and work as a team. And collaboration, they collaborate effectively with their peers, and then they build real world skills, and then it, which in turn promotes their own personal growth. So this is one topic from grade 10 CBSE textbook. Le Media is one of the lessons that serves as a perfect example of project-based learning. So one of the, this, since this lesson talks about the different types of media, the print and the digital media, students can be assigned one of the important products, or one of the important outcome that could be, that we can decide upon, is telling the students to create a school newspaper. How can we produce a school newspaper that reflects the interests of the school community? That could be the topic. So what are the skills that they will build in this process? Writing, research, editing. Of course, when they are creating a newspaper, they will have to do design, and then teamwork. And we can tell them that they can either design a physical or a digital school newspaper, of course. And then again, this has to have a certain rubric. And then here in this, students don't just come to the teacher once they are done with the final product. You can break up this along with the students. We co-create. This project based learning is something that we will have to is an approach which will have the teachers involve or collaborate with the students at every step of the way, not just towards the end. Like then the steps have to be very clearly mentioned. The students just cannot, one day the teacher cannot just tell the students, okay, you people are divided into 5 6 groups, and I want to see a physical or a digital newspaper. So you will have to break it into manageable chunks, and then they will have to show their progress at every step. If we evaluate the progress collectively, if there are any changes, we suggest the changes, or if we all agree to what has been done, then we proceed to the next step, and then we arrive at the final product. So here the journey matters. Just the final product alone doesn't matter. The journey is as important as the final product. What are the steps that I have taken to reach? What are the things I have done to arrive at the final product? How has the final product shaped, has how has it shaped up in the end? That's very important. So the teacher has to monitor the student at every the student or the students at every step. But project based learning can mostly be done as a group. It cannot be done done individually. So what are the steps that are based in project based learning? what are the steps that are involved in project based learning? First, the project is launched, and but it cannot be something that is very vague, or it cannot be something that is very academic. It cannot be something that is that you cannot tell. We cannot ask students to write an essay. It should be something that is the question has to be a very open ended one. And what are the steps that a student takes to achieve their final uh, product? What is how have the students arrived at the final product? That's very important.
Yes, here's another interesting poll question on your screen. The question is, which of these is not an example of project-based learning? And the options are creating a class magazine, designing a community survey, completing a grammar worksheet, making a science exhibition model. I request everyone to vote their answers. Yes, 64 educators have voted the third option, which is completing a grammar worksheet.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Completing a grammar worksheet is the correct option because it is not at all related to project based learning. So, one of the one as I jog my memory, I recall one such one experience of mine with some of my students in 2020 in the pandemic year. They all built, actually, the students, grade 5 students collaborated and built a particular, a shield. They made a shield for the public. This public could wear the shield and move out, and it was not like a mask. It was not the mask that we all wore, but it was something more than that. So we arrived at particular. First of all, we thought, okay, we decided, the question started like this, like, we are all in the pandemic era, so what are the precautions we should take when we step out? Okay, using hand sanitizers, okay, we'll have to wear a mask, that's fine, that's all okay. And then we have to maintain social distancing. Yes, all this is done. No, there's something that is still needed. So what is it that we can do? So they all designed a mask with multiple layers, and they even tested it with some people in the local community, and actually some of them even launched their own products, and it was a very huge hit, and they got a taste of the entrepreneurship as well through this experience. So the first one is the project launch, and the second one is inquiry and research into the problem. And then the third stage, students design and then they plan about the product. And then next is, once they do that, it would be next thing that they would have to do is to implement and create, and then you present it to the audience, and then you evaluate it. So once we present it to the audience, we understand we understand what are the merits and demerits of the product, and then what are the things, and how have we, like, has it benefited people from all walks of life, or has it benefited all groups of people, or is it something that has only benefited certain sect of people, or what is it that, or are there any gaps, and what is it that, what can I do to fill those gaps? How can I adjust, or how can I adjust my learning? How can I, what is it that I still need to do to uh, fill these gaps? That's very important, because this helps them to actually see their own mistakes and their own shortcomings, and then they adjust their learning and their understanding. They understand, or they fine tune their product based on the feedback that they have actually received from whatever they have done earlier. So this students learn. This is something that the teacher should not micromanage. The teacher has to give agency to the students to be for them to be able to function independently and creatively. Of course, this teacher can offer support, but project based learning, as I said, is a very prolonged uh, what do you say method, and it's a very prolonged activity. It will take students should minimally, it runs to months, but we should know when to stop, because it cannot also run indefinitely. So we should have a very clear start and end date, and we should give time to the students to be able to arrive at the final product in their own pace. At the same time, not let them take up a lot of time for that. And also, every monitoring at every step is important. So as I already said, the journey is as important as the product. So these are These are few things, these are few topics that I've implemented in the class, and which actually kind of helped me to understand the students better. And I'm looking to implement other approaches as well in my classrooms, but these are the ways in which you can actually implement the modern approaches in a foreign language classroom, which will help the students to learn or use the foreign language more effectively. Ultimately, we want the students to be able to use the language, so that these methods absolutely help the students to use the language in the real world context. So I wrap up my presentation here, and thank you for your patient listening, and thank you for your enthusiastic participation in the by answering the poll questions. Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone who joined.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you found the session informative. And a big thank you to our facilitator, Josna Shivakumar, for a very engaging and information session for our community of teachers. Thank you, ma'am. I'm sure that our teachers have a lot of takeaways from this session. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks to my sincere thanks to Senta for giving me the opportunity.
Yes. Once again, thank you for joining the session. I hope you found the session helpful. If you have registered and filled out the feedback form for the session, check your participation record in the app in the My Learning session. I will guide you through the instructions. Step 1, open the Senda app on your device. Step 2, navigate to the ongoing webinar section. Step 3, click on Submit Feedback. Please note that this option will be available at 6 p.m. IST. Step 4, at the end of the session, we will share a 4-digit code required for the feedback. Enter this code to access the feedback form. The code is 3749. I repeat the code to access the feedback form. It is 3749. Step 5, complete the feedback form and you will be able to download your record of participation instantly. This new process was introduced to streamline your experience and ensure your participation is instantly recognized. Thank you all for your active participation in today's session. We truly appreciate your engagement. To register for more upcoming webinars, please visit the Center app. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.